Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Rico and this is Relatively Sound, the channel that spins the black circle. Now, a couple footnotes before we begin today's episode. As you may have noticed, I do have a different webcam that I'm using today, so the image quality may look a little crispier than normal. I am still adjusting some settings and I'm going to be messing around with the way things might look in the future, including the editing. So definitely drop us a comment and let us know if you think it's looking all right. Second thing I wanted to bring up real quick is I'm also getting over another cold. So I am going to be a little sniffly, sound maybe a little nasally. So I apologize for that. But the show must go on. So today I wanted to talk about Record Store Day. This was going to be just a fun little quick episode where I went over this year's Record Store Day releases, the ones I wanted to get, and then just my experience with how my Record Store Day went this year, what I ended up picking up, any other things that I got. But I do have to start off with a little rant that I think a lot of people are maybe going to understand where I'm coming from. A lot of people may agree with me. But before I go on my rant, for those who don't know, Record Store Day is a twice-a-year event, normally in the spring and then normally on Black Friday, where there are special albums being released from bands, record labels, artists that are exclusive usually for those 2 days of the year. And what happens is these bands and artists will come up with special releases. Sometimes it'll be an album being issued on vinyl for the first time ever, being pressed for the first time ever on vinyl. It might be a re-release that everyone's been waiting for. It might be a live album, a compilation album with demos, a deluxe version of an album, or sometimes just a brand new album. And a lot of the time, these special releases are only for Record Store Day, meaning sometimes they're not released again later on. An example of this would be like the Foo Fighters covers album, Medium Rare, that came out some years ago. Was never put on streaming services, was never really put on like normal records that were released later on to, online stores and other record stores. Basically, like if you didn't get it on Record Store Day, the only way to get it was to buy it from someone else online, which we're definitely going to get to that in a minute. But then other times, these releases will get re-released down the road. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, you're not sure after this Record Store Day if you'll see it out in the wild again, if it'll have a more mass production. And that's kind of what some of the fun of Record Store Day is. Like, you get the list, gets released, a couple months in advance. You start like making your own list of here are the things that I want, here are the things I'm hoping to get this year. And then the day of Record Store Day, everyone goes to their local record store, wait in line, get these special one-of-a-time releases. And then while they're there, they shop, throughout the rest of the record store, maybe getting some used records, CDs, cassettes, whatever. And you just have a fun time. You bring home some great records out of your collection. You post about it on social media. It's supposed to be a fun time. And up until the last couple of years, I've really enjoyed it. I've had some really good record store days here in California. I had some great ones growing up in Washington. There's this one time in Seattle, my mom and I were going to Jive Time, and we were walking back, and we literally crossed the street with Dave Matthews. I don't think anyone else around us knew it was Dave Matthews, but I definitely recognized him, so that was kind of fun. But I think it means different to a lot of people now. I'm not just talking about me as a consumer, but I also think it means different to local record stores. Because unfortunately nowadays, it's a cash grab opportunity. And what I mean by that is there's going to be certain releases that are going to be extremely popular. The last couple of years, it's been whatever Taylor Swift releases. This year, though, was also the K-pop Demon Hunters, that soundtrack. Certain albums and bands who are super popular around the whole world, when they release something special for Record Store Day, it's going to be sought after. Everyone's going to want to get in line and get it. And unfortunately, what that means is they'll get some people who camp out overnight to grab copies to then go sell online for twice or three times the original asking price. And that is insane. I think it's just downright stupid, and you shouldn't pay those prices because those people are just scalpers. They're no different than a concert ticket scalper or nowadays Pokemon scalpers, people who get in line for Pokemon cards to buy them and then rip people off to then buy them and then just rip people off online. And I think it's scummy. And it does put a damper on the whole event for most people because people are waiting in line to get something for their own collection, and then they might get, beat out by people in front of them to then just go and sell it online. So half the time these records aren't even being bought for the purchase of enjoying them, but to like resell them. And that sucks. And because of that, there are some local record stores who now don't participate in Record Store Day. One, because they don't make a profit anyway, or two, they just don't want to deal with the scalpers. And it's understandable. And now it's just seen as, instead of a day to celebrate vinyl and the vinyl community and the record collecting community and just music in general, it's just seen as kind of like exclusive merch that you're going to have to wait in line to buy. That's not even really worth it. And that kind of gets me to my second point, is that the last couple of years, the actual items that have been released, like the actual list, it's just been getting like less and less exciting. This year, honestly, looking at the list, there was not a ton of options that I actually felt like I needed to get. Now, number one on our list, and I say ours because normally it's just I'm the one that does the shopping when it comes to the records because I'm the one that likes spinning them and listening to them. But Lindsay, when she found out her favorite band, Mute Math, was not only re-releasing their self-titled album, but it was going to be the Warner Brothers versions, which is our preferred track list of the album, for the first time ever on vinyl. It was a must get. It was an absolute, we need to get it. And just off the bat, I already knew they weren't making a lot of copies. And that's the thing about Record Store Day. A lot of the time, these copies are limited, which is even harder because they have to go to record stores across the whole United States. And it's just, your local record store, which might not be big in the first place, might only get one copy. And if you're not number one in line, your chances of getting it dwindle. And so we already knew it was going to be a hard time finding that. But that was number one on our list. Other ones that I was interested in, my top one was probably the live Bruce Springsteen box set, Live from Asbury Park 2024. It's got 5 records, a fantastic set that he did in 2024 in Asbury Park. He did a lot of older songs. He did some deep cuts. Bruce always puts out a good show. So live Bruce albums are a must get. So I knew I wanted that. Speaking of live records, Tom Petty and Heartbreakers were releasing a live album from 1978. I will say this one didn't excite me as much because even though I love live Tom Petty, it wasn't a super long concert. And some of the songs were covers or older songs that maybe aren't my favorite. So I was I definitely want to get it, but if I don't find it at my record store, I'll get it online down the road because a lot of the time Tom Petty's estate has been re-releasing the album, so they're not even that exclusive. Other ones I was interested in, Talking Heads always released something for Record Store Day. This year it was a album of demos from CBS/Columbia Records, and just some songs from their first couple albums, or songs that didn't even make it on their first couple albums. And, again, it wasn't something that I thought I was going to necessarily need to get. But if it was there and I didn't have any other records that I wanted, I probably would have picked it up. And then some albums that I thought Tony would really want to get this year. There was a Mark Lanigan release of his album Bubblegum, but the original draft. So the first maybe track listing that he came up with for the album. I like that album now too, so I would have probably gotten that. A couple live Stone Temple Pilot type albums. One was a live album from them from 2001. And then a Scott solo live album that he did in 2009. And then Steely Dan released their first live album on vinyl for the first time ever called Alive in America. That not only that I thought Tony would want to get, but I kind of want because Tony on this channel has really gotten me into Steely Dan. So I'm cool, I'll get that if it's available. And then even a couple other albums that I didn't need to get, but I probably would have liked. John Frusciante re-released his album To Only Record Water for 10 Days. And then The Cars released Heartbreak City Live, a live album from that time period of Heartbreak City. And again, another album that I would have gotten if I had the opportunity to. Now, here is the thing. Our local record store, which I'm not going to name, but our local record store is not the best record store because it's half record store, half like antique slash clothing store. It used to be an entirely just music record store with movies, CDs, DVDs, and of course records, but now it's like half and half. They just don't always have the best selection. And every year it's like their selection on Record Store Day has been smaller and smaller and smaller. And unfortunately this year they just had one singular crate of these record store releases. Now, I just mentioned the ones I wanted. The list every year is huge of bands and artists that, I don't listen to or don't like. And this point isn't to go through the entire list. I will say, again, there was only a handful that I really, really wanted. The rest that I mentioned are just kind of ones that are kind of cool, but are not a must need for me. But the list is normally big, and it's that way because, everyone listens to different music and they try to be all encompassing as possible. Not only did the list just seem kind of weak this year, but my local record store, just did not have anything this year. And people in line were kind of pissed when they got up to the front because you wait in line. Lindsay and I got there like a little over an hour and a half before they opened. And once we went to the front of the line and saw it was one box, everyone was like, telephone down the line going, hey, they don't have much. They don't have much. And then like everyone started just grunting and being disappointed. And they only had 2 records that I was interested in, which was the Steely Dan album and the Talking Heads album. My first couple picks, the Bruce, the Tom Petty, they didn't even have those. And of course, they didn't have the Mute Math. Again, we were not expecting the Mute Math in the first place because Mute Math is not a well-known band. There was limited copies of this re-release, but it was just disappointing when neither of us got the top things we wanted. So it just kind of leaves a sour taste in your mouth. I did end up going and shopping through the rest of their selection, the normal everyday selection. I did pick me up Elliott Smith's Figure 8 album that Tony got me into on this channel that was missing from my collection. And then I also got The Point by Harry Nilsson. One, because Harry Nilsson's so fucking underrated and I'll listen to anything he does. But it's a cool album that he made for like an animated show slash like movie. And it's like a soundtrack, so like some of it is music, some of it is like narration over music. But it's a cool little album that I enjoyed picking up. And then the other 2 were just the Record Store Day ones I got. The Steely Dan album and the Talking Heads one. I'm not going to get into a huge review of those 2 new releases. Steely Dan album, the live one, I had never heard before because, again, I'm still getting into the band. And there's actually some songs on this live album I've yet to hear the studio version of, but I thought it was mixed excellently. The mix was just so well done. The drums are crisp, the bass is very audible, all the horns sound great, backing vocals sound good. Talking Heads was a fun listen. Again, it's probably not one I like absolutely needed because even though I do love the Talking Heads, these are songs that obviously we've all heard before. Although I will say it was just them as a 3-piece band, so it's just, acoustic guitar, most of the songs, bass and drums. So it is cool kind of hearing these songs in a different setting, but I would say it's only necessary for a hardcore fan, and I think hardcore enough to probably be worth, I would say I'm hardcore enough for it to actually be a good album to have in my collection, but not a must for other fans. So I was happy with the albums I got, but also very disappointed at the same time because, I have the dough. I was expecting to drop some money on, the Bruce Springsteen box set, the Tom Petty one, the Mute Math one. And I only walked away with a couple that I wasn't necessarily looking out for in the first place. And if I'm being honest, if I'm going to participate in Record Store Day again, I'm either going to go to a new record store, which I did find out there is another one in our town, in our city, that I'll probably try next year. Because I guess if I request albums to the owner, he might actually try to get them. So next year, that'll be what I'll do. Or I'll just go all out next year and go to somewhere like Amoeba, which is one of the biggest and best record stores, in the U.S. So, but I will say, Record Store Day over the last couple years just seems less like a celebration of music and these records, but more like what gimmicky thing is the record label going to release this year? How limited is it going to be? And then how are people going to ruin it for the actual enjoyers of these albums to just go and buy them and scalp them online? I got lucky and thankfully got a decently priced copy of the Mute Math 1 on Discogs that should be arriving in the mail in a couple days. But just, at the end of the day, it was just this event that I think used to be more fun for most people. It just seems more like a cash grab or more like, not a necessity, but more like I'm just doing this out of spite. Like, I almost feel like I'm obligated to go instead of like I'm actually excited and I want to go. So I hope something changes over the next year or two. I hope there's just more wide releases of these albums and less limited. I hope there's maybe just like better selections. Like there's so many albums by bands I love that should be getting issued on vinyl for the first time or reissued or coming up with just more than just like here's some leftover demos that everyone's heard or here's, the 10th live album from a band that's released a live album every single year for Record Store Day. Like make it as something more special and more widely available. Maybe that I know that defeats the purpose of this, twice a year event, but I don't know. Now it's just becoming more like how can we make money? And I know that's always going to be a part of it, but as someone who's a collector, someone that just loves music, I hope next year it's a little different. But yeah, that was my haul. I did buy the Mute Math vinyl online, and I probably will at some point go and buy the Bruce box set online, the Tom Petty album, because those are some of my favorite artists, and I do think these releases are worth it. But let us know about not only how did your record store day go this year, what did you get, what were you most excited to get, what did you not end up getting, and what are what is your overall opinion on Record Store Day? Has it changed over the years? Is it something you're still excited for? Do you think labels or just the event itself should kind of change things up in the next couple of years? Just let us know what your overall opinions, because hey, at the end of the day, that's kind of what this channel is for. Is just us to give our opinions and for people to voice theirs and just have a nice friendly discussion. Until next time, we hope you take care. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.